Most people come to trading thinking the hardest part is learning the strategy. They believe if they can just find the right indicators, the right entries, the right confirmations, everything will fall into place. That belief is comforting because it gives the pain somewhere external to live. It makes the problem feel solvable with effort alone. But that belief doesn't survive very long once real money is on the line. Because the truth is, the strategy is never the part that breaks you. It's the stages you're forced to walk through that do. The first time you sit in front of a chart and realize nothing you learned is translating into consistency, something shifts inside you. Not loudly. Quietly. It's not panic yet. It's confusion mixed with optimism. You still believe you're close. You still believe one tweak will fix everything. You still believe the market owes you clarity if you just study hard enough. And that's exactly what makes this stage so dangerous. It doesn't feel like failure, it feels like progress that hasn't paid off yet. I remember staring at charts late at night, convinced I was missing something obvious. I would replay the same setups over and over, telling myself I was one adjustment away, one parameter, one time window, one risk tweak. I wasn't losing hope yet. I was losing time, and I didn't even realize it. If you've ever felt like you're working harder than ever, but somehow moving sideways, like you're busy without being effective, like trading is starting to feel heavier instead of clearer, like the video right now, because that feeling is exactly where this journey begins. Somewhere else, there's a guy who's going through the same thing. He found trading through YouTube clips and Discord screenshots. He saw the wins, the payouts, the confidence. He didn't come in arrogant. He came in hungry. He watched hours of content, took notes, backtested, and felt smart doing it. And then he went live. That's when the noise started. Trades that looked perfect lost. Trades he skipped ran. The charts didn't behave like the lessons promised. So he did what most people do at this stage. He doubled down on learning. More videos, more systems, more voices. He thought confusion meant ignorance. He didn't realize confusion was the initiation. This stage doesn't break you by taking your money. It breaks you by stealing your certainty. You stop trusting your eyes. You stop trusting your decisions. You start waiting for permission from the market before acting. And the market never gives permission, it only reacts. That's when hesitation creeps in. That split second where you know the rules but don't feel ready. That pause that cost you entries. That second guessing that turns clean execution into messy improvisation. If you've ever watched price hit your level perfectly after you hesitated, comment something like, "I hesitated," so you know you're not alone. Every profitable trader has lived there. The difference is not whether they experienced it, it's whether they stayed. At some point, the confusion turns inward. You stop blaming the market and start questioning yourself. You wonder if you're wired for this, if you're disciplined enough, if you have the patience, if you're just pretending. This is where most traders quietly drift away, not with a dramatic blowup. With slow disengagement, they trade less. They stop journaling. They stop caring. They tell themselves trading didn't work for them. What they really mean is they didn't survive the first transformation. The irony is this stage exists for a reason. It strips you of fantasy. It removes the idea that trading is about prediction. It teaches you that clarity doesn't come from more information. It comes from subtraction. But you can't hear that lesson while you're still searching. You have to exhaust the search first. I once had a stretch where nothing felt aligned. I wasn't blowing accounts, but I wasn't growing either. I was stuck in break-even hell. Win, loss, win, loss. The kind of cycle that messes with your head because it gives you just enough hope to keep going and just enough frustration to make you reckless. I remember thinking maybe consistency just isn't sustainable. Maybe this is as good as it gets. That thought scared me more than losing money because it suggested effort had limits. What nobody tells you is that this stage isn't about improving results. It's about breaking attachment to outcomes. You don't learn that by reading. You learn it by being disappointed over and over without quitting. You learn it by placing trades that follow your plan and still lose. You learn it by realizing discipline doesn't protect you from losses. It only protects you from yourself. There's a point where something clicks, but not in the way beginners expect. You don't suddenly start winning more. You stop reacting as much. Losses don't sting the same. Wins don't inflate you. You start seeing trades as data instead of judgments. That's when the second stage begins, and this is where the real brutality lives. This is the stage where you know better but don't always do better, where you understand the rules but feel tempted to break them, where you're no longer ignorant but still emotional. This is where ego fights discipline daily. This is where most traders sabotage themselves without realizing it. I've seen people with profitable strategies lose money simply because they couldn't stay still. They knew their edge, they proved it in backtests, they saw it work. But live trading exposed a deeper problem. They needed to feel involved, they needed to feel smart, they needed action. So they overtraded, they micromanaged, they interfered. There's a woman named Elena who traded clean during simulations. Perfect execution, calm demeanor. But once real money was involved, everything changed. She would move stops early, take profits too fast, skip trades after losses. Not because she didn't know better, but because discipline felt uncomfortable. Following rules meant surrendering control. And surrender feels like weakness until you realize its strength. If you've ever broken your own rules even though you knew better, like the video, because this is where traders are separated. Not by intelligence, by restraint. This stage doesn't feel like confusion anymore, it feels like self-betrayal. You know exactly what you should have done after the fact, and that's what hurts. The awareness makes it worse. You replay the trade not to learn, but to punish yourself. You say things like, "I knew it," or "Why did I do that?" And slowly, confidence erodes again. Not because you don't know how to trade, but because you don't trust yourself to execute. This is where many traders look for accountability systems, bots, trade managers, anything external to enforce discipline. And those tools can help, but they don't solve the core issue. The issue is identity. You're transitioning from someone who wants to win to someone who wants to execute. That shift is subtle but violent. It requires you to detach your worth from your results. Most people never do. I remember a period where my biggest enemy wasn't losing trades. It was boredom. Waiting for setups felt unbearable. I would justify entries that were close enough. I would tell myself conditions were basically there. That's how discipline dies. Not through rebellion, but through negotiation. If this resonates, subscribe to the channel because this is the side of trading that actually determines who lasts. Strategies change, markets evolve, but this internal war stays the same. There's a reason this stage lasts longer than the first. Confusion is loud. Discipline failure is quiet. It happens one trade at a time, one exception, one impulse, one lapse. And because nothing catastrophic happens immediately, you convince yourself it's fine until it's not. Then something strange happens. If you don't quit, if you don't burn out, if you don't retreat into excuses, the noise starts to fade. You trade less. You don't feel the urge to interfere as much. You accept missed trades without spiraling. You start measuring success by execution, not P&L. This is the beginning of the final stage. And it's the loneliest one. Profits don't explode here, they creep. Quietly, slowly, in a way that feels almost anticlimactic. There's no emotional high, no rush, just repetition. And that's what scares people. Because it doesn't feel like success, it feels like routine. This stage feels empty if you were chasing excitement. It feels boring if you were addicted to stimulation. It feels underwhelming if you thought profitability would finally fix how you feel about yourself. Because by the time you reach this point, trading stops being emotional currency. It stops validating you. It stops entertaining you. It becomes work, quiet work. And most people were never chasing consistency. They were chasing relief. I remember the first time I noticed I didn't feel anything after a winning day. No rush, no urge to tell anyone, no screenshots, just numbers updating in a journal and me closing the platform like I had finished a task. It scared me for a moment. I thought something was wrong. I thought I had lost passion. What I had actually lost was dependency, and that's the cost of stability. You don't get to keep the highs if you want to eliminate the lows. There's a guy named Andre who reached this point and almost quit because of it. He told me trading felt lifeless now, that it used to feel intense and meaningful. He said it felt like a job he didn't apply for. What he didn't realize was that intensity was the addiction, not the purpose. The market had stopped playing with him. It was no longer rewarding emotion. It was rewarding structure. This is the stage where doubt comes back, but in a different form. Not loud, subtle. You start wondering if this is all there is. If grinding out small, consistent gains is really worth the time. If the dream you had at the beginning still matches the reality in front of you. And because the progress is slow, because the results are steady instead of explosive, You start comparing yourself again. You look at social media. You see big wins, big claims, big personalities. And for a moment, you feel small. If you've ever questioned whether consistency is worth it because it doesn't look impressive, like the video because that temptation has pulled more traders backward than failure ever did. This stage requires something most people never develop: contentment without complacency, the ability to stay engaged without being emotionally invested, to show up every day without needing excitement as fuel. This is where identity finally shifts. You're no longer a trader trying to become profitable, you're a trader protecting a process. I went through a phase where I kept expecting the next breakthrough, the moment where it all felt worth it. It never came. What came instead was predictability. And predictability doesn't clap for you. It doesn't celebrate. It just compounds quietly. And that silence is unbearable for people who need constant reassurance. Tasha reached consistency and then blew it up on purpose. Not consciously, subconsciously. She told herself she was bored. She started increasing size, taking marginal setups. She wanted to feel alive again. Within weeks, months of progress were gone. When she finally admitted what happened, she said something that stuck with me. She said losing felt familiar. Winning quietly didn't. That's the final test. Not whether you can win, whether you can live without chaos. At this stage, the market becomes a mirror. It reflects how patient you are, how disciplined you are when no one is watching, how grounded you are when nothing dramatic is happening. You don't get feedback after every trade. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose. Sometimes you do nothing, and that's the win. That takes a level of maturity most people never build. This is also where isolation kicks in, because you can't really talk about this phase with beginners. They don't understand it yet, and you can't relate to gamblers anymore. You're somewhere in between, quietly working, quietly refining, quietly growing. If you've ever felt like trading got lonelier the better you became, comment quiet grind, because that's the tax of mastery. I used to think the goal was confidence. It's not. Confidence comes and goes. The real goal is neutrality. The ability to place a trade without emotional weight, to close a day without judgment, to review without self-attack. That's when trading stops controlling your mood. At some point, you realize the market isn't the enemy. It never was. The enemy was expectation. The expectation that progress should feel good, the expectation that effort should be rewarded quickly, the expectation that mastery should look exciting. Those expectations are why most traders never make it past this stage. If you're still here, if you're still listening, share this video with someone who thinks trading is about finding the perfect setup. They might not like it, but they'll need it. This final stage doesn't end. It doesn't graduate you. It doesn't give you a trophy. It just becomes your baseline. And the moment you try to escape it, the market humbles you again. Profitable traders aren't special. They're just willing to live in this space longer than others. I want to speak directly to you for a moment. If you're frustrated, confused, disciplined but tired, or quietly profitable but unsatisfied, you're not behind. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The market isn't testing your intelligence, it's testing your ability to change who you are. Most people never survive all three stages. They quit during confusion, they sabotage during discipline, or they self-destruct during consistency. Not because they're incapable, but because they don't recognize the cost of growth when it shows up as discomfort instead of reward. If this video gave you language for what you've been feeling, subscribe because this channel exists for traders who want longevity, not adrenaline. And if you've survived one of these stages, comment which one you're in now. Not for validation, but for awareness. There's no finish line in trading, only deeper levels of responsibility. The more consistent you become, the more accountable you must be. To your process, to your risk, to your mindset. That's the real progression. Most traders think the hardest part is getting profitable. It isn't. The hardest part is staying the same person once profitability removes the pressure that forced you to grow in the first place. Because pressure creates structure. Comfort exposes character. And this is where traders quietly give back everything they fought for. There's a strange moment that happens after consistency sets in. You stop obsessing over every trade, but you also stop feeling urgency. The fire that pushed you through confusion and forced discipline cools down. And if you're not careful, that calm turns into looseness. Not immediately, gradually. You skip a journal entry here, you eyeball risk there, you tell yourself you've earned flexibility. That's how decay starts. Not through recklessness, but through entitlement. I watched this happen to someone named Chris. He was methodical, disciplined, almost boring when he was building. He tracked everything, followed rules like they were law. Once he hit steady monthly profitability, he relaxed. He said he deserved to trust himself now. He increased size without recalibrating psychology. He took trades that felt right instead of waiting for confirmation. He wasn't gambling, he was drifting. And drift is more dangerous than chaos because it doesn't feel wrong until the damage is done. If you've ever told yourself, I've got this now, and then paid for it later, like the video because that sentence has emptied more accounts than ignorance ever did. This is why profitable traders become almost obsessive about routine. Not because they're rigid, but because they know freedom comes from constraints. They protect boredom. They protect repetition. They protect the parts of trading that feel dull because those parts are what keep them alive. I had to relearn this the hard way. There was a period where I stopped journaling consistently because I thought I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't losing, I wasn't spiraling, I was fine. Until I wasn't. Small mistakes stacked. Execution got sloppy, results dipped. And the scariest part wasn't the drawdown. It was realizing how fast discipline eroded once I stopped respecting it. That's when it hit me. Discipline isn't something you build and keep. It's something you rent daily. And the rent is paid in attention. The final stage of this journey isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming honest. Honest about your limits. Honest about your tendencies. Honest about the fact that you're never done. That humility is what keeps profitable traders profitable. Not confidence. Not experience. Humility. There's a reason seasoned traders talk less. They don't need to convince anyone. They don't need to prove anything. They've seen how fragile success can be. They've lived through cycles. They've watched friends quit. They've watched themselves almost quit. And that awareness grounds them. If you're early in this journey, this might sound heavy. That's because it is. Trading isn't hard because it's complex. It's hard because it requires you to evolve faster than your comfort wants to allow. It forces you to confront impatience, ego, boredom, fear, and identity all at once. That's why most people fail even with good strategies. The market doesn't care how smart you are, it cares how consistent you are under pressure and how stable you are without it. If you're still watching at this point, subscribe because this channel isn't about motivation. It's about preparation. And preparation is what keeps you in the game long enough for skill to matter. I want to circle back to the beginning for a moment. Remember that first stage. The confusion, the overwhelm, the feeling of being lost despite effort. That stage exists to humble you. The second stage exists to discipline you. The final stage exists to expose you. Each one strips something away. Illusion, ego, dependency. What's left is who you actually are, and that's the trader the market responds to. If you've ever wondered why some traders seem unshakable, it's not because they don't feel fear or doubt. It's because they've already survived them. They've already been tested in ways you can't see on a chart. They've already lost, questioned themselves, rebuilt, stabilized, and chosen restraint over excitement. This is why shortcuts don't work. You can't skip a stage without paying for it later. You can't borrow discipline. You can't fake patience. You can't hack maturity. You earn it by staying when it would be easier to leave. There's nothing glamorous about that, and that's why it works. At some point, you stop asking how long this will take. That question disappears quietly. Not because you've arrived, but because you've accepted that arrival was never the point. The market doesn't reward urgency. It doesn't care about timelines. It responds to repetition, restraint, and survival. And the moment you stop negotiating with time is the moment trading finally starts working with you instead of against you. There's a strange relief that comes with this realization. Not excitement. Relief. The relief of no longer trying to force progress. The relief of letting the process unfold without constantly checking the clock. That's when trading stops feeling like a test you're failing and starts feeling like a craft you're refining. I remember a stretch where nothing notable happened for months. No big wins, no big losses, just execution. Day after day. Same setups, same risk, same routine. Old me would have panicked. Old me would have felt behind. This version of me understood something different. That this quiet stretch was the proof. That consistency wasn't supposed to feel dramatic. It was supposed to feel stable. That's the moment most traders mistake as stagnation. Daniel reached this phase and thought he had plateaued. He said trading felt flat. He wasn't losing, but he wasn't feeling growth. So he went searching again. New strategies, new styles, new influences. Within weeks, the noise returned. The confusion came back fast. Not because the market changed, but because he abandoned the version of himself that had finally stabilized. He thought growth meant change. He didn't realize growth sometimes means staying exactly where you are. If you've ever felt the urge to reinvent your trading when things were actually working, like the video because that impulse is the last trap. This is where discipline evolves into identity. You're no longer following rules because you're afraid of losing. You're following rules because breaking them feels foreign. Execution becomes automatic. Risk feels natural. You don't need reminders. You don't need motivation. You just do the work. But here's the part nobody warns you about. This stage will test your patience more than any losing streak ever could. Because losing gives you a reason to push. Winning quietly gives you none. There's no urgency forcing you forward. You have to choose consistency without pressure. And most people can't. This is why profitable traders build lives outside the market. They don't make trading their emotional center. They train. They build businesses. They create structure elsewhere because if trading becomes your only source of meaning, you will eventually sabotage it. You'll need it to feel exciting again, and excitement is the enemy of longevity. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when trading was my identity. Every green day lifted me. Every red day weighed on me. Even when I was profitable, I wasn't free. I was dependent. The moment I diversified my focus, trading improved. Not because I cared less, but because I needed it less. If you're tying your self-worth to your P&L, comment detach, because that awareness alone can save you years. This final stage is where humility becomes non-negotiable. You stop assuming you're immune to mistakes. You stop thinking experience protects you. You double down on the basics. You respect risk more, not less. You understand that the market doesn't reward seniority. It rewards alignment. There's a quiet confidence that comes from this place. Not arrogance, not bravado. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You don't feel threatened by other traders' results. You don't compare timelines. You're too busy managing your own process. That's why the best traders often seem unbothered. Not because they don't care, because they care about the right things. If you're in the early stage and everything feels chaotic, that's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you've entered. If you're in the discipline stage and you keep slipping despite knowing better, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And if you're in the quiet stage and wondering why success doesn't feel the way you imagined, that doesn't mean something is missing. It means something unnecessary has finally left. Most people never make it through all three, not because they aren't capable, but because they expect the wrong reward at each stage. They expect clarity instead of confusion, control instead of restraint, excitement instead of peace. The market gives you the opposite on purpose. The truth is, trading doesn't change you by making you rich. It changes you by removing illusions. Illusions about effort, illusions about talent, illusions about control. What's left is discipline, patience, and responsibility. And those qualities don't just make you a better trader. They change how you move through everything else. I've seen traders who survive these stages apply the same mindset to business, health, relationships. They stop chasing outcomes and start respecting process. They stop reacting and start responding. They stop needing validation and start trusting systems. That's the real return on investment. There's a moment that doesn't get talked about because it doesn't look impressive on the outside. It's the moment when you realize you could stop trading for a few days and nothing inside you panics. No itch, no urgency, no fear that you're missing something. That's not laziness, that's stability. And it's one of the clearest signs you've actually survived what most people never do. When trading no longer feels like an escape hatch or a proving ground, it becomes what it was always supposed to be. A tool, a system, a repeatable process that runs alongside your life instead of running it. That's when pressure finally leaves your decisions. You're no longer trying to win back confidence. You're not trying to validate intelligence. You're not chasing the feeling of being right. You're executing because execution is who you are now. I remember the first week I skipped a trade on purpose and didn't feel regret. The setup was fine. Conditions were there. But something in me knew it wasn't clean enough. Old me would have forced it. Old me would have needed the action. This time, I closed the chart and moved on with my day. Nothing happened. No emotional crash, no self-lecture, just calm. That's when it hit me. Trading had finally stopped controlling my nervous system. There's a guy named Luis who messaged me once saying he thought he lost his edge because he wasn't excited anymore. He said trading felt flat, mechanical, almost boring. I asked him one question: are you making fewer emotional mistakes than before? He paused. Then he laughed. He said yes. That was the answer. Excitement leaving is not a warning sign, it's the receipt. This is why profitable traders don't sound like beginners when they talk. There's no urgency in their voice, no need to convince, no obsession with proving how good they are. They've already been humbled enough times to know how fragile this game is. They've paid the tuition in confusion, discipline failures, boredom, doubt, and restraint. And they respect the market because of it. The reason this video matters is because most traders quit thinking something is wrong with them. They think the struggle means they're not cut out for this. They think profitable traders skip this pain. They didn't. They just survived it quietly. And nobody posts screenshots of survival. The confusion stage humbles you. The discipline stage breaks your ego. The quiet stage strips away your need for excitement. None of those feel like progress when you're inside them. All of them are necessary. And if you're in any one of them right now, you're not behind. You're in sequence. I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you for finding this hard. Trading is designed to expose every weakness you haven't addressed yet. Impatience, overconfidence, fear of boredom, need for validation. If you don't see those parts of yourself yet, you will. The market has a way of finding them for you. If this video gave you clarity instead of hype, subscribe, because this channel is built for traders who want to last, not just feel good for a week. And if you know someone who's beating themselves up thinking they're failing, share this with them. Not to motivate them, to orient them. Most people never become profitable because they mistake discomfort for danger. They leave right before the shift happens, or they sabotage themselves once things stabilize because chaos feels familiar, or they get bored with consistency and chase excitement again. The ones who make it are not tougher. They're just more honest about what this path actually costs. There's no shortcut around these stages, but there is peace on the other side of them. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that compounds. And if you're still here after all of this, still thinking, still reflecting, that tells me one thing: you're probably closer than you think.